Hello and welcome to SWIFT's African Regional Conference in Accra, Ghana. And with me is Alain Raes, who's SWIFT's CEO for EMEA and APAC. Alain, welcome to the conference.
Thanks for having me.
And let's talk a little bit about the challenges facing African banks in terms of updating their payment mechanisms.
It is changing very rapidly in Africa as well as it is changing in the rest of the world. I would say that the biggest challenge the financial institutions are nowadays facing is actually the pace of change. Precisely the fact that technology is changing so fast, the focus also that financial institutions have to put on the customer experience is really pushing actually for a lot more innovation. It's fair to say that nowadays it is more the non-banks that are taking the lead, bringing new technologies and really trying to propose to the clients, being corporates or being individual clients, another kind of experience.
So the fintechs are kind of pushing the whole thing along?
They do, and to be fair, actually, when you see what has happened in Africa is perhaps, the very beginning of all this. You may remember the story about M-Pesa, that was about 10 years ago, 15 years ago in Kenya, that radically changed the landscape of how actually the customer experience is happening in that country. From there on, they really expanded to many other countries, and you see similar sort of phenomenon happening in other parts of the world. Like in China, you see companies like Ant Financials, you see companies like Tencent that are radically changing the way that financial institutions are proposing the service to the clients.
Because one of the things that you often experience in emerging markets is they have the ability to leapfrog, don't they? And,
exactly.
So they're not bundled down with the old technology. They can go straight to the new technology.
Exactly. That's a bit of the advantage that they have. They have luxury somewhere to starting from an empty sheet and don't have to deal therefore with all the hassle of the legacy system that they have that the other banks have to deal with. So clearly they have that sort of advantage. At the same time, what we see also is that banks, financial institutions are now reacting very forcefully as well. They're trying to reinventing the model, reinventing the business model as well, and trying to proposing a new experience. So they're trying to catching up at the same time, trying to proposing the right balance and the right value to the clients.
All right, now tell us a little bit about how SWIFT can help. I mean, apart from organising this marvellous conference.
Well, clearly, you know, actually, that we're a corporate society. We're trying to making sure that our industry, our community is reacting and proposing the right level of service. This is actually what we've been created for. So the mission we have is trying to proposing to our member banks technologies, value proposition that can enable them to really enhancing their value proposition, their service for their own clients, being corporate clients or individual clients. A few years ago, if you remember, actually, we introduced GPI,
yes.
the Global Payments Initiatives. That is really a new service that is proposing to removing a certain number of frictions that are happening in the way that payments are being delivered. We've been launching that service about now 2.5 years ago, and I have to say that the success has been really there.
Okay, has there been a big take-up in Africa for that?
In Africa, perhaps a bit lower than others, but we have now 20 banks that are actually very proactively engaging and implementing the service, and we hope that over the next few months, we're going to have a certain number of them moving live and proposing, therefore, new corridors between Africa and the rest of the world.
Okay, because the other interesting thing, of course, is we've seen the development of the Continental Free Trade Area, and we're talking about regional integration there. I imagine GPI can play quite a big role in that.
I suppose so, right? Clearly, I mean, GPI kind of service are designed to proposing this and making sure that over time, regional integration, like the one you see in this part of Africa, the one you see in Eastern Africa or Southern Africa, are really delivering something. Clearly, GPI should be helping to removing the barriers that you have to trade.
Okay, and how far off do you think instant payments is for Africa? Obviously, we already have it in some places.
Well, somewhere you have it already, right? I mean, you have M-Pesa was somewhere the first. It wasn't real-time payment systems as we see it today, but it was actually perhaps the first sign of that kind of service. Now you see other countries now, like Southern Africa, is now trying really to forge its way to delivering the same kind of service. We see also fintechs trying to deliver their service, but at the same time, what we see in most of those countries are very domestic closed loops. The key question is how will they start interconnecting these real-time payment systems? That is one thing that we're trying to deliver as well, right? You know that today we have already more than hundreds of banks, actually 300 banks that are connected to GPI. We see all these payments at the international level being delivered the SLA is 1 day, but the reality is that more than 50% of all these international payments are being delivered within 30 seconds. Some of them are actually being delivered in 5 seconds. So is there therefore a way in which that we can use GPI as a common denominator between all these domestic real-time mechanisms? And that is actually what we're trying now, right? We've been running already last year at Cybos in Sydney, a proof of concept, connecting clients in China all the way down to banks in Australia and connecting to the real-time payment system that we do operate in Australia. Now we're trying to do the same thing in between Asia and Europe, but also in that context, interconnecting real-time payment systems that we do not operate, and proving therefore that we can propose with GPI the interconnectivity in between those systems.
Alain, it's a very exciting time. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.